फजले उमर तेरे ओ साफ करीमाना यादा के बनाते हैं हर रूह को दीवाना।
Waqf-e-Jadid is a scheme that was launched by Hazrat Khalifa Masih Sani in 1957, and the objective of this scheme was twofold. The primary objective was to look after the spiritual upbringing of members of the Jamaat in rural parts of India and Pakistan. So there was this, as a result of this scheme, there were muallims who were sent out to rural areas to ensure that members of the Jamaat had an appropriate tarbiyat, especially where they didn't have large established mosques in city centres. And the second objective of the scheme was to bring the message of Islam to the Hindu population of the Indian subcontinent.
He had a great vision, Hazrat Musleh Maud, on all aspects, and he began to realize that although, as I said, in the urban centers we were progressing, but in the rural areas there was this dire need. And one of the other things which transpired to him was that especially one of the areas which he concentrated initially was the Sindh area, where the Hindu community was very destitute and very poor, and the Christians were making inroads with them. And he felt that this is where Islam should take precedence, and therefore through this scheme, by the grace and mercy of Allah, many people were converted to Ahmadiyyat through this scheme, in which the aspects of true Islam were told to the people, and they began to accept Ahmadiyyat in large numbers.
As a result of contributions that came from this, people would dedicate their time on an arzi basis, i.e. a temporary basis, to go out and fulfill this duty. I mean, for a murabbi, a full murabbi, he has to go through several years of training through Jamaat. They have to dedicate their entire lives to the service of the Jamaat. But my understanding is that through the scheme of Waqf-e-Jadid, you can have people that aren't murabbis as such, but have gained training to a basic level, who can go to these rural parts of India. Of course, subsequently, the scheme was initially just for the Indian subcontinent, but then Hazrat Khalifa Masih Rahimahullah Ta'ala extended it to the entire world. So where these muallims can go and effectively ensure that members of the Jamaat are getting appropriate tarbiyat.
This muallimeen has now increased extensively. There are, by the grace of mercy of Allah, thousands of muallimeen. And I come from Africa myself, and some years back I was working in Uganda, and I was just amazed. I had lived in Uganda in East Africa, and at that time there were no muallimeen, sort of pre-50 era. But now when you go there, in any village, by the grace and mercy of Allah, you will find these muallimeen who are doing sterling work for the Jamaat in ensuring, as I said, not only the tarbiyat of the members, but to carry forward the message of Ahmadiyya to the corners of the world.
हर रोज तो तुझ जैसे इंसान नहीं लाती, इंसान नहीं लाती, ये गर्दिश रोजाना, ये
Hazrat Khalifa Masih Khamis Ayyadahullah Ta'ala bin Nasr Aziz has said that with a little bit of effort we can easily reach 1 million participants in this blessed scheme, and in fact he's even mentioned the figure of 10 million is not impossible. So the scheme, from a very humble beginnings, has grown massively, both in terms of the numbers of people who have the opportunity to participate, but also in terms of the total monies raised and the areas within which people are benefiting as a direct result of this scheme.
This scheme requires financial sacrifices from the Jamaat members itself. And it's interesting to note that over the 50 odd years that this scheme has been running, in each year the amount of money and the amount of contributors has steadily increased. Perhaps I should not say steadily increased, but increased manifold. And today, by the grace and mercy of Allah, last year I believe that about 530,000 people joined in this scheme. And it's not only sort of the adult members, but also children, and I'll come to that a little while later. And the amount of money that has been collected is over £3.5 million, which is a huge amount for this scheme, which started with, I believe, the first contributors paid about 6 rupees, you know, which when you translate it in today's money is perhaps less than a few pennies. But that's what it started off as. Now, in this regard, the money which has been utilized is, we must not think that it only comes, say, from Europe or America. But in fact, in the last few years, we have seen a great improvement in the amount of money which the Africans and the Indian people themselves give towards this scheme. And that is how things become successful, is that when the poorest themselves are contributing. You know, in the world today, when we look at Africa in particular, and also India, they are the ones who actually contribute quite extensively. There's an example given once that, you know, that someone who gives only, let us say a poor person, gives a few pennies, while he has only got a few pounds perhaps to give. But the percentage he gives is so extensive, and therefore the blessing that he gets is also extensive as well. And this is how Allah has arranged that we find even with Ahmadis in Africa and India. Although sometimes they don't even know what they're going to have for their next meal, by the grace and mercy of Allah, they are contributing so generously. And it is this really which determines the success of Ahmadiyyat.
In Islam, there is a great emphasis on financial sacrifice. You know, one of our 5 pillars of Islam is paying zakat. There's a great emphasis on giving sadaqah. And even within the Jamaat, we pay our chanda.
The other chandas are, you know, compulsory and only on your income. This is one where, you know, you don't have to rely on income, you know, you can get it out of your pocket money.
The amount of financial sacrifice that is demanded from us in today's day and age is completely insignificant when you look back at the times of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, everyone's heard the story of Hazrat Abu Bakr basically bringing everything from his house and giving it for the cause of Islam, only leaving the name of Allah in his house. Hazrat Umar also is quite often quoted in this story, who was far wealthier than Hazrat Abu Bakr, and he brought half his wealth. So I don't think anybody in today's age is asked to give up half their possessions for the cause of Allah. It's relatively you know, minor sacrifices which are demanded in today's day and age, but the blessings are immense.
The financial sacrifice is very, very important for us to understand, and we give, you know, as much as we can afford. Now, as you said, well, what happens with this money? By the grace and mercy of Allah, you know, once the money has been collected, you know, we have set up new centers now in Africa, in Asia, in India and other places, where Maulameen, colleges for the Maulameen have been set up, so that money goes in running those particular schools. And then from that, many Maulameen come out. And as I told you, that now it runs in 100,000s, not even thousands, 100,000s. So they are helped through this scheme. So the Maulameen are doing that sterling job, where they go into the rural areas, into the villages. And I have seen some of them, I mentioned when I was in Uganda, they live in very remote areas, they live in mud huts and villages, whatever the poor people can afford. You must remember that you are going to the very poorest of people, and they live there with them and become part of them. And this is how, by the grace and mercy of Allah, the message of Ahmadiyyat spreads. And also it gives the new entrants to Ahmadiyyat hope that here we have people who are reasonably educated as compared to them, who come to them, live with them and share their sorrows and their hopes as well. And it is this greatness in the Maulameen, which I believe, which then generates this great tarbiyat and tabligh activities in the Jamaat.
There's always been a great emphasis laid upon participation in this scheme in particular by children. In fact, Hazrat Khalifah Masih Salis, Rahimahullah Ta'ala, established some honorary titles for the children of the Jamaat that contribute to this scheme. And they were Young Mujahid, Mujahid Safe Dom and Mujahid Safe Awal. And a child could achieve one of these honorary titles depending upon the amount that they contributed. So this really started a great spirit amongst the children of the Jamaat to participate in this blessed scheme, and we're seeing the fruits of that today, to be honest. For instance, if I was to take a Jamaat like Pakistan, which mashallah has had the #1 spot in total contributions for Waqf-e-Jadid for many years now, it's staggering when you think that 50% of total contributions by the Jamaat in Pakistan are from children alone. And that's a phenomenal figure when you think about it, is that mashallah, not only is the country the largest contributor in the world, so it's a significant amount of money that they contribute. I mean, relatively speaking, people in the United States or here in the United Kingdom or indeed in Europe, they have much stronger currencies. Generally people tend to be more affluent. And even considering that, albeit it's fair to say that our Jamaat is larger in Pakistan, but nonetheless it's a big contribution, and for half of that to come from children, I think is amazing. And it's real heartwarming that actually the future of our Jamaat is in the hands of children like these who are making such an immense sacrifice.
One of the prophecies of the promised Messiah Islam was that Ahmadiyyat would reach the corners of the world. And as I mentioned earlier, Hazrat Musleh Maud saw that to get this message to the corner of the world, we had to go to the most remotest and the most rural of areas. And now we see that dream being fulfilled, because truly Ahmadiyyat has reached the corners of the world through this great scheme. And not only has it reached to the corners of the world, but by doing so, it has brought truth, honesty, integrity to nations who were bereft of that. And the true message of the Holy Prophet ﷺ is being fulfilled, that truth and honesty and true Islam will come again through the Messiah, and that indeed is being fulfilled by this great scheme.